This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. We're going to go ahead and skip ad reads today and get right into things because I can tell you now this is probably going to go longer than usual. So strap in. With all of the heavy things going on in the world right now. And given the fact that we just talked about them in last week's episode and on last week's Substack blog post, which you can sign up for and find down below in the show notes, by the way. I figure this would be a really great time to go ahead and lighten things up and give out part 2 of the 2-part series on Latin America. If you're unfamiliar or if you're relatively new, you can go back and look up part 1, which is, I'm sure it's every bit as relevant today as it was back when I did it a couple years ago. And it focuses on everything from Mexico down to Central America and the Caribbean. That was its own episode. Part 2, which is what we're doing right now, is going to be everything in South America, every country that considers itself Latin America, and one that kind of does. Now, the reason I do this is because with the ever-changing world and with the fourth turning that we're in, it's always a really great idea to give yourself optionality. Whenever I talk about passports and residencies and things like that, people are just dumb. They always go so far over to one side. They think that I'm advocating that they leave the place they live. Now, in some cases, that might be the move. Make no mistake. But at least give yourself the option to. That's the biggest thing. With me, I really hate being trapped, and I feel like a lot of you probably share that with me. That's just always been the worst feeling. Whenever I felt like I was trapped in a particular job or a city or a relationship, I made it a point to make sure that this situation never happened again. And the good news is you can do that just with a little bit of preparation and just changing your focus a little bit on the way you approach different things. Now, when it comes to second passports, I have been sold the idea of second passports ever since probably 2016 when I was listening to the Nomad Capitalist podcast, and they are still trying to sell them to me now. One of the things I have realized over time, and this is very specific to my situation, is that I probably don't need a second passport. I was really working my way towards one, but looking at it, I have the optionality of 3 different permanent residencies that I have now with Mexico, Panama, and Paraguay. And I also have a very strong American passport, which I could probably give you 50 reasons why it would be stupid to ever renounce that particular citizenship. Now, in terms of taxes, is it the most tax-friendly country in the world? Of course not, but it's also not completely oppressive, and I have structured everything to where I'm paying a lot less in taxes than I was before. So you can kind of enjoy the best of both worlds there. But here's the thing, too. If your country ever gets so bad to the point to where you would want to renounce citizenship, you would have to have another citizenship to fall back on. You can't just go stateless. So there is a real time and a place for that. I am just betting that I will never have to or want to do that with my United States citizenship. If I was in Canada, Australia, Europe, or somewhere outside of the West even, I might not feel that way. I have a number of Haitian friends here in Mexico, and they're like, yeah, we want to go for another passport as soon as we can. We can't do anything with our Haitian passports. And then in other places I go, I meet a lot of Europeans that say, hey, we're completely done with it. This is not the place I remember. We know which way it's going. It's never going to self-correct, or at least it's not going to do that anytime soon. And so I'm going to hang on to the passport just in case, but I'm going to get a second passport and I'm going to live somewhere else. And a lot of these things, they just make perfect sense. From a lifestyle strategy, from a tax strategy, people have slowly figured this out. And very, very seldom, when they do move away, do they ever go back. I think the only ones that ever do are like the ones with kids, and there's always maybe a reason there. But for me, what I've seen, the return rate is very, very, very small. But the problem is that I see a lot, especially early on, for people who are doing this for the very first time, is you just have to understand how terrible your current level of intel is. Everybody has all these preconceived notions about what this country is going to be like, and it's never, ever correct. And maybe listening to me is not going to change that level of intel too much, but I will do my best. I've always thought like attracts like. And so even though you and I are probably two different people, I think we likely share enough character traits, which will make this advice that I'm about to give you on South American countries better than what you're generally going to find out there. Remember, most Westerners are extremely soft. Almost all of them have this it's all over type of mentality. Understand, there's going to be a little bit, usually, of sacrifice you will have to deal with coming from a Western country to a Latin American country. But if you want to list the pros and cons, I think you will find that once you find the place you like, the pros vastly outweigh the cons. But the biggest thing you need to do is get yourself up and go to these places. You have to see for yourself, because I guarantee you the intel you have now is not good enough. And best case scenario. Worst case scenario, it's probably completely the opposite of what's really going on in these countries. I mean, just ask your average dumbass American what's going on in Mexico and see what they say. But just remember that. And one final thing I will say before I get into these countries is I know I have a lot of listeners, subscribers from Latin America, and you're going to say what people in the last episode said, VP, it's not really like that. No, it actually is from a Westerner's perspective, and that's the perspective I am giving. I'm giving this perspective to other Westerners. I'm sure to you it's not like that, but my main audience here is Westerners who are likely, I hope, interested in giving themselves that optionality and just don't know quite where to go or which places would suit them best. And there is just a crazy good opportunity all over South America for lifestyle, for taxes, for business, for banking, for so many things, including dating. And on that note, let's go ahead and start with Colombia. Oh boy. So I am not a lover of Colombia. There are parts of it I really do like, but everybody wants to talk about Medellin. I don't like Medellin. I'll just come out and say it. I know I'm in a minority there when I say that. The whole city feels very predatory and ratchety to me. And I have been in the Poblado area, the Laureles area, and a couple areas around those too. I know it's a big place. They have their nice areas. I just haven't seen them yet. I can only report on what I did see. I was probably in Colombia itself for a grand total of maybe 2 months. So I feel like a bit long enough to where I can talk a little bit about it. But Medellin's just not it for me. Everybody wants to talk about how great the weather is, the eternal spring, whatever. It rains there every day, for one. And to me, that's not perfect weather. It's nice. The climate is a nice feeling climate. You're never too hot or too cold there. I'll give it that. But again, raining every day is not my idea of awesomeness. The traffic there is ridiculous. You really have to pick and choose when you take an Uber or a taxi, or it's going to be a mess. And honestly, man, Gringos just really messed up the vibe there. It's really the only main city I can say that about. If you give us enough time and you put the incentive out there, we will screw things up. And that's exactly what Medellin did. Somebody decided it would be a great idea to have a JetBlue flight and a Spirit flight fly out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and bring in a bunch of people who we now call passport bros, who just want to come down for a cheap lay and get with Colombian women, which I don't blame them for. I don't think Medellin has the best ones. And now people think I'm out of my mind for that, but no. Just not my overall type at all. But anyway, they're just bringing in the wrong type of people. Your average passport bro, whether they're American or European in most cases, they're just scummy, gross people. And if I was Colombian, I wouldn't want them there either. And unfortunately, they look at every gringo that way now because they can't really differentiate one from the other. The first time I went down there was 2021. I was by myself, and I'm sure almost everybody there thought I was a sex tourist. For the record, I was not. But then I went down there again for a conference, and I stayed in a completely different area. And for one, almost every place I go, even the nicer areas, were just too ratchety for me. Maybe I would have liked them better when I was in my 20s, but in my 40s, I just have no patience for it. Nice areas need to be nice areas, start to finish. And there's just too many people out there who want to come up and say something to me, which I don't like. I know what you want, and I just generally want to be left alone. There were several times where I got approached by Colombians who were very, very good English speakers, and those are the absolute worst ones to talk to. Those guys are always up to something. Now, I know, law of abundance, and, you shouldn't really generalize a city of millions and millions of people because they're big and there are areas. I just hadn't found them. And I did go to areas which were supposed to be nice. And if that's what's considered nice, I'm just not interested. Now, I will say there's a lot of people who have come there and started really great lives. They have found local women, started families, started businesses, and done really, really well. So I know it's possible. And I know my sample size probably just wasn't big enough. But I can only report to you on the sample size I have. And places like Medellin and Cartagena, I was just not impressed at all. That whole coast in Colombia is it's super hot. It's not developed the right way. And again, has probably even more of a predatory nature than Medellin had. On the other side, I thought Cali was a really cool city, very up and coming. You have to know what areas to go to, so do some work there, but can be rewarding. Very pretty girls, darker skin, usually. And then Bogota. Now, weather-wise, it's going to be kind of chilly most of the time in Bogota. Similar to what you would see probably in Mexico City, maybe a little bit colder. But to me, a much better place to live. Now, there's only very certain parts in a city of 9 million people where you can actually live peacefully when it comes to Bogota. But those areas are quite nice. The women are absolutely amazing. They just have that classic beauty, feminine look, like genetic lottery winners, to where they're almost perfect. To where Medellin, people will go down there to find some girl with oversized TNA and a Black Widow tattoo on her neck, and wonder why they got drugged. I'm like, well, that's on you. I'm going for like telenovela star level of beauty. Now, do I always get it? Of course not. But it's fun to try, and they're great to look at. And you will certainly get that in Bogota. I do like Bogota quite a bit. But even there are moments where you're like, okay, my defense has got to go up a bit, which is not the end of the world. Again, I was born and raised in a place like that, and I came out just fine. And Colombia is a large, diverse country, and I would like to see more of it. But that's, for right now, that's my overall report on what I saw there. In terms of a place to live and work and exist, probably not going to be for me. I know we have a few of you who you are Westerners who live there. Please go to YouTube. This podcast does go to YouTube. Go to the comments section and let us know your take. We are all here to help each other. Give us the pros, give us the cons. Tell me where I'm right, tell me where I'm wrong. I'm very open to it. But just remember, we're looking for Westerners' perspectives here because that's the audience I'm mainly broadcasting this to. All right, I don't think we'll spend that much time on a single country anymore, but I thought Colombia kind of warranted that because that's a popular place for people to go right now or people to think about. And I just wanted to tell you what VP saw there. So let's move on to Venezuela. We don't need to spend too much time here because I've never been. It's still very dangerous for Americans to go there, even though the situation is cleared up. I have a lot of Venezuelan friends. All of my friends in Panama are Venezuelan. And even they're like, I can't wait to go back and see family and do all that. But the time to do that is not right now. So if they're not going, I'm not going. I sit there and see all these nomads trying to pick the bottom on Venezuela as far as like moving there or investing there or whatever. And it's just not time. I don't know if the bottom's in, but I don't really think we're moving towards anything livable as far as a Westerner goes just yet. But definitely a place to keep your eye on. But we should probably move to countries you could actually live in at this point. And so let's move over to Ecuador. Now, I have not spent meaningful time in Ecuador, but here's what I can tell you for now. Again, weather is probably the biggest thing for me. It is the one thing that affects you every single day. Now, if you enjoy hot weather, well, then you're going to really love Latin America. If you don't, like me, then that's fine. You're just going to want to look for places that have some degree of elevation because that's going to moderate the temperature. And if this is the case, then I got some good news for you. Ecuador has plenty of elevation. You have the capital city, Quito, which gets mixed reviews, but some people really do like it. And then the one city that gets a lot of Westerners is a place called Cuenca, Cuenca. Really great, like that kind of that eternal spring weather we talk about. And I'm looking forward to going to it. From what I understand, a lot of Westerners whose political views skew a bit more liberal end up in Cuenca somehow. I'm not sure why, but if that pertains to you, might be something you're interested in. They do have the dollar. The banking system there is pretty solid from what I understand. And the women are too, from everything I've seen. So it could be a place to really go explore. There's been a little bit of turmoil in the news with the United States trying to get the bad elements out of there. That is generally a good thing long term, but just something to keep your eye on. And pay attention to which parts of the country that affects, because it never affects the entire country. But Ecuador is on the list, for sure, for me. I just can't speak too much about it. Over to a place I can speak a bit more about, and that's going to be Peru. Peru is very, very underrated, especially Lima. If you want a proper city with good weather and amazing food, weather and food are the two things that will affect you every single day, and you're getting top tier weather and food in Lima, Peru. It's not even just the Peruvian cuisine. My friend put it a good way. He goes, they just try harder there with the food, with the service, everything. It's great. Now, it's still a Latin American city. It's not going to be super beautiful, but there's never a shortage of things to do. It is a big, proper, urban city. You're going to want to be in the areas of either Miraflores or Barranco. Both are very nice and unique in their own ways. And I should be mentioning, too, the overall cost. I kind of forgot to do that. Colombia is weird because their currency got so much stronger in the past year. I would say it used to be about 30 cents on the dollar, which is some of the cheapest out there. Now I'm not quite sure. Please understand, unless your prime objective is budget, you're one of those people, you're going to live much cheaper no matter where you go for the most part. But I just don't quite know where to put Colombia. Ecuador, I heard, is about 50 cents on the dollar. Venezuela, who the hell knows? Peru, I'm going to say, is probably going to be about 55 to 60 cents on the dollar in Lima, which is probably going to be where you want to end up, or at least where you want to start out. Lima is just a really good city. Now, weather-wise, it is a tale of two halves. Half the year, it's kind of gloomy and overcast for 6 months, and then the other half, it's sunny, but not super hot sunny, which is awesome. Now, we were there during gloomy season, but we still had a great time. I like to walk, and Lima is such a walkable city, and with that type of weather, I could walk all day and not really get tired or hot or sweaty or cold or anything. Loved it. Super underrated. And if the passport bros out there just had the presence of mind to go to Lima instead of Medellin, I think they would have a better success rate. Now, dating-wise, the reason why a lot of Westerners don't look at Peru the same way they do Colombia is because there is a certain indigenous look that you will see in those Andean countries that Westerners just generally don't like as much. Now, what I will say about Lima and this was unexpected, is that this particular look does apply to about half of the people in Lima, to where I would say the other half, you don't get that. So if you do like that look, well, you're in luck. But if you don't necessarily, then you're still going to do just fine. Remember, law of abundance. This is a city of over 11 million people. And the women are cute, and they're very educated and warm and open to dating gringos. Yet almost nobody talks about Lima. But I'll say this, man, your life from a weather, a culinary, dating, just stuff to do, art, history, all that stuff, you're getting it. And for, what did I say, about 50, 55 cents on the dollar. And from Lima, so many other really interesting places you can go. Machu Picchu's having a bit of a problem with erosion. If you're going to go, you might want to go soon. But that's certainly not the only place to go in Peru. Very bullish on the country, on the city of Lima, the people. Super, super impressed. And just can't understand why people don't talk about it more. Now, not the easiest residency to get unless you want to live there permanently. But if there's some place to live permanently, you could do a lot worse than here. Where should we go now? Let's I guess just kind of go and stick with neighboring countries here. And one that was not interesting before but got interesting this past year is Bolivia. For those of you who are looking for bang for the buck, Bolivia's kind of the new it girl now, and for good reason. Generally very safe. Mountains everywhere, so you can decide what type of weather experience you want. Don't go too high, you might have problems. You're getting really high up in elevation here in some places. But Santa Cruz is becoming one of those cities to where you can live really well for maybe 15 to 20 cents on the dollar. You have other areas like Sucre, which sometimes get a bad rap, but everybody I know who's gone there says it's really, really nice. Again, next time I go to Paraguay, I am looking forward to also checking out Bolivia. It used to be pretty tough for Americans, for example, to get into the country. Now it's not. No more visa requirements, no more bureaucracy. You can just go right in. So I can't really say too much more than that because I haven't been yet. But word on the street so far has been very positive. And the same thing I said about women in Lima, you can pretty much say the same thing about Santa Cruz. You're going to get that look some places, and you're also not going to get that look in other places. Now, I will say, if you're coming in fresh from the West, and Bolivia is the first place you go, the adjustment might be a bit tough. Once you really get south of Peru, in my opinion, the Americanness and the Westernness of these countries almost completely goes away. And you're now dealing with an entirely different ecosystem with different products, different transportation, just a different way of doing a lot of things that may just irritate you too much on your first time down. And I would hate for that to be your Latin American experience. But if you're okay with that, and you can actually adjust, then I really do think the juice is worth the squeeze in most of these areas. Speaking of, let's go ahead and move on to my beloved Paraguay. Let me just go ahead and say, Paraguay is not for everybody. I love it. One of my best friends hates it. But in fairness, he said he was glad he went and checked it out. And, as an aside, he's actually getting Paraguayan residency there just so he can get the document that gives him easy access to the entire Mercosur area, which is all the southern cone. They're adding Peru, Panama. It's a growing area. And these residencies, there's all these hidden benefits you don't always know right up front. But these things are just your ticket to everything. But anyway, with Paraguay, you're going to be in Asunción. There's no real reason to be anywhere else, in my opinion, right now. There are two other main cities. There's Ciudad del Este, which is to the east that borders Brazil. I don't really see any reason for anybody to live there. And then there is a very nice, pleasant city called Encarnacion that is south. But you're going to have issues with connectivity if you live out there and you have to go back home or really anywhere because it's quite remote. So if you're going to go, you're going to be in the capital, Asuncion. And it's a place I really like, but I do know that it's a bit rough around the edges, but I'm also a long game player. And what I see is this town is growing like a weed, and they also want it to be a nice place. They've gotten rid of a lot of the corrupt mayors that have made the roads all busted, and all of the buses look like they're from the 1940s. And like they get it, there's a lot of money coming into that country, and they seem to be allocating it properly. Now, is the place still corrupt? Yes. As I've mentioned before on this show, as a Westerner who would be considered rich in a country like this, can this be to your absolute benefit? Yes. One of my favorite things about Latin America is the corruption and how a guy like me can get pushed to the front of the line for very little money sometimes. Kind of wish every place was like this. But your typical person who comes to Paraguay is going to be very business focused, usually pretty financially secure, even though we're talking about a place that can be anywhere from like 20 to 30 cents on the dollar. I mean, who would purposely come and live in the middle of nowhere? It takes a very particular type of person. And for some reason, I just get along so well with almost everybody who comes into this place. You know, we'll be sitting there drinking, and I'll be like, hey, raise your hand if you were the oddball in your group of friends. Now, I certainly was. I don't know if you were, but almost everybody raises their hand. And when you already have something that specific in common, I feel like it's really easy to go from there. You know, I'm at the age to where I don't need to make a whole lot of friends, but I cannot help making so many like good friends that I still talk to and actually come visit me in Mexico. Nobody in the U.S. does that. But like that's really kind of the big payoff for me is not just the opportunity down there. Like as an investor, I can't get my money down there fast enough. But just the type of people I always end up meeting down there. Now, weather-wise, kind of like Vegas, there's going to be 4 months of just hell, but you don't necessarily have to be there for those times. I'm certainly not. But then 8 months of pretty good weather. The food, it's not bad. It's just not going to be the most flavorful food. It's going to be really fresh. I do like that. I kind of do need to say something about the steaks here. They really, really oversell the steaks in Paraguay. Are they natural, grass-fed, wonderful in that way? Yes. Are they anything like you're going to find in Argentina or the United States? No, not at all. Severely lacking in fat and seasoning. And do not let anybody convince you otherwise. But everything else they say about the place is pretty spot on. Underdeveloped, but up and coming. You can go there, eat your cheap steaks, shoot your guns, find places to invest, and just meet some of the best people you're ever going to meet. And the residency permit, the price has not changed. It is still one of the cheapest out there. It is paradise for a lot of people. It is maybe not paradise for me, but a place that I could certainly live for a while and have. And even if you get residency there, it's a great jumping off point to a lot of other places. Other places we'll talk about soon. But while we're here, we should talk about the women. The women have a very particular look. In the words of somebody I mentioned before, Caleb Jones, small titties, big ass. And that's pretty accurate, actually. So if you're okay with that body type, they generally have pretty light skin and dark hair. Do not expect a lot of them to speak very good English, but again, law of abundance, you can find these girls. I have. Even though geographically there's not a huge reason to learn English in this part of the world, the university does teach it, and a lot of students learn it. So I would say it's not super duper easy mode, but it's also not really hard mode either. We'll get to hard mode. But before we do that, let's hop on over to Uruguay. Interesting about Uruguay. It gets billed as, the Switzerland of South America, super safe, blah, blah, blah. Now, safe can generally mean boring, But let me rant on this for just a minute. Because people say the same thing about Paraguay, and I don't find Paraguay to be boring. Now, if you're 22 years old and you like drugs and nightclubs and beach life and you're looking for all of that, then yeah, you're not going to like Paraguay. But for the most part, let's be completely honest here. Almost everybody lives 99% of the time within a 5-mile radius of where they reside, especially if you're in a city. And so that 5-mile radius is really all that matters. And where I live now and where I was in Paraguay, I had tons of things in that 5-mile radius. Restaurants, bars, museums, parks, live music. There are so many places I have not been yet in those 5-mile radiuses. And chances are I'll probably never see them all. There's always going to be a lot to do. And you can get this experience anywhere, including a place like Montevideo, Uruguay, which everybody says is boring. No, it's not. Lots of stuff to do. Safety-wise, it didn't feel any safer or less safe than most places I've been, really. You do smell weed a lot, unfortunately, which I don't love having that forced upon me. But cool city, European vibes for sure. A place that I probably could settle down. I mean, you're talking probably more about 75 to 80 cents on the dollar, though. So it's something you're really going to have to want. Now, anytime somebody preaches safety and things like that, they're normally talking to older people with families or retirees. And so that's mostly going to be the people who would be interested in a place like Uruguay. Now, they do have a really great beach city there called Punta del Este, but it's completely dead for like 8 months out of the year. So, I said this on X before. I think beach cities are vastly overrated as a place to actually live. I would rather live in a functional city and then have a beach town not far away, which I have now, and you would have if you lived in the capital of Uruguay. So does it justify the price? I don't know. There are certainly other places that hit that wow factor for me more, but I just don't think the boring label is fair for Uruguay. I think you're getting pretty great weather, a lot, plenty of things to do. The people there are a bit more standoffish. Like you're going to have to get to know them. A lot of Uber drivers didn't just start talking to me like they do in almost every other country I go to. They're probably more reserved that way, but I thought everybody was very nice. The women, I'm going to save that one until I get to Argentina because I think they're very similar. But yeah, when people tell you a place is boring, just remember that perspective. It's really your 5-mile radius is all that matters. And you can find a fun, exciting 5-mile radius almost anywhere. Let's hop over to Chile for a moment here. Chile, I found to be very, very underrated, just like I did Peru. Santiago it's a big city. It has its areas that aren't great, but it has its areas that are really great. To where you're getting Manhattan vibes for, you're probably looking at maybe 60 cents on the dollar here. People talk about how expensive Santiago is. I didn't experience that. Food and lodging is, again, 50, 60 cents on the dollar, and the transportation system there is great. I found the people there to be nice, again, a bit more standoffish, extremely confident. But at the same time, even if you speak Spanish, don't think you're going to be able to understand their Spanish. I even had to tell an Uber driver, I'm like, he was just speaking, regular Spanish to me like I knew what the hell he was talking about. I'm like, bro, you know that nobody can understand you, right? And he was oblivious. But that's kind of a thing in Latin America. When I was in Peru, I told them I was going to Chile. And they're like, even we don't understand Chileans at all. And I'm like, oh, great. There's no way I'm going to understand them. And I was right. Now, when it comes to the language barrier, I should mention this now, too. Kind of doesn't really matter in my world. Like, my Spanish isn't super great, but I can always get around. I can communicate what I need. There's always pantomiming in Google Translate when you can't. And I said this before, too. Latinos are very nice. They will try to meet you in the middle. It's not like France, to where like if you're not fluent, fuck you. We're not helping you. You can always, the language barrier has never gotten in the way of what I wanted to do. I can't think of one time where I just threw my hands up and said, all right, screw it, I'm out of here. I can't communicate with you people. But Chile is a challenge, Spanish-wise. Weather can be quite good. There's only a few pockets in the world where you get that true Mediterranean climate. In the Western Hemisphere, those two places are going to be Northern California and the mid to southern coast of Chile. I would say Santiago is going to be more kind of temperate. You're going to get all four seasons or close to it. There's another city called Valparaiso, which I was not really impressed with, but it didn't matter because I just thought Santiago was just amazing. And it's such a great jumping off point if you like nature at all. You're going to find nature on steroids out there. And I am really, really looking forward to diving more into that country. The food is going to be good across the board. You're not going to get like Chilean food in most places. It's not really a thing. It's not much of a thing out there. I mean, every country's got their own, but you're mostly going to be eating international food when you're there. And then the dating, Chile has a reputation for not having attractive women. I kind of see where they're coming from there, but then it's not all bad. Again, large city, law of abundance, law of large numbers. They do exist. And they are very elegant, educated women in Santiago. And they really don't get a lot of Westerners there. So the women are quite open to meeting more of them. Now, the last true Latin American country to touch on, and again, don't get mad at anything I'm saying, contrarians. I'm just trying to be honest with my experiences there and just kind of talk to you like a regular person without holding back. But I want to go over the good and the bad of Argentina because I think Argentina is a pretty awesomely unique place. And one of the great things about having a base in Paraguay, which I do now, is my proximity to places like Chile and Argentina. And, hopefully I'll feel that way about Bolivia too. But I'll mainly touch on Buenos Aires because, again, I've always said before, start in the capital or the largest city and go from there. So your first experience in Argentina is probably going to be Buenos Aires. And Buenos Aires is a proper city. And when I was walking around, I kept thinking to myself, man, what does this remind me of? I walked around a city that looked like this before, and it really does remind me of Paris in a lot of ways. Just the day-to-day and the way the architecture looks. It was known as the Paris of the South for a very long time. It was extremely rich and successful until the socialists ruined it. But still a very vibey, unique place with very unique people. Now, weather-wise, you're going to get probably all four seasons. You're going to get very hot summers sometimes and freezing winters sometimes. So if you grew up in the Midwest, like I did, you're kind of used to that, and in some ways, you kind of like it. The food there is almost always going to be above average to good. Yes, the steaks are amazing there. If I had any complaint with Argentina food-wise, it would be the diversity of food. It's not really what you think it would be for some place that markets itself as a food city and a food country. Like I have an Argentinian friend, and I play a little game with him. I'm like, all right, you would know this more than anybody. Name me 5 foods that originate in Argentina. And so he tried to say steak. I'm like, no, you did not invent steak. And even he was only able to come up with like 4 or 5 things, and it took a while. A lot of what you're going to eat there is going to be international food, but it's going to be of good quality. Ease of moving around is pretty good. Everything is very walkable. The Ubers are solid. Taxis are good. People say it's a bit of a dysfunctional place. I do get what they're talking about, but it's one of those things that, like any place in Latin America, where the dysfunctionality is not really going to affect you most of the time, but you just kind of remember when it does. And you're just going to be like, oh, Jesus, Argentina, get your shit together. But again, when you weigh out the pros and cons, I think Buenos Aires is a lovely place to be. A lot of unique little neighborhoods you can go and check out. Now, the dating is what I referred to earlier as hard mode, in my opinion. I will say, first of all, again, just a personal preference. Don't get all upset if there's any of you out there. I was always told Argentine women were amazingly beautiful, and I barely saw two in Buenos Aires. And trust me, I was looking all over for them. Maybe I'm just weird. Again, I felt the same in Medellin. But I'm just looking around. I'm like, where are they? I don't see them. On top of that, Argentine women are kind of known for being a bit more, I think masculine's a rough way to put it, maybe not as feminine as you would want. And then to make matters worse, I mean, you have to understand, the Argies there, they have more or less been through a war for the last 20 years. Not a conventional war, but a currency war that they had to find a way through, and they found a way. And as a result, they are very, very close with each other. They all have a very unique bond amongst each other. And as an outsider, that bond is going to be a bit of a challenge at times if you're looking to date. As always, your mileage may vary. But when I was there, I kind of had this why bother mentality. Let's just enjoy the city and the steak and the ice cream and the wine and just focus on that. And that's what I do when I go to Argentina, and I always have a great time. But a very livable place, in my opinion, with some really great upside. But as a single man, I just wish the dating was a bit better is all. Now, finally, there was one girl in Argentina that she probably thought I was super creepy because I could not stop looking at her, and then I went up and talked to her and found out she was not from Argentina. She was from Brazil, because of course she was. Now, Brazil does not consider themselves to be Latin America because they are not Latinos, which is correct. Problem is, we Westerners can't really tell the difference, nor do we care, so we often lump Brazil into the Latin America category. So I've spent some time in Brazil, but I will say it is such a huge, diverse country, I don't even think I can do it justice. Here's what I will say. Weather just depends on where you are. The place is gigantic, right? I did not have one bad meal when I was there. Very few people talk about Brazilian food. They always think it's that kind of Brazilian barbecue style, which it is, but it's so many other things too. I was really, really impressed with the food. The people are extremely nice. I ran into this group of guys one night, and we ended up going to a different bar and then a samba place afterwards, and that was it. This was almost 2 years ago, and they still text me. This is the type of people we're talking about here. The women are as advertised. I will say not on the regular, but when you start getting up to the top ends, there's really nothing better. 9s and 10s in Brazil are 13s and 14s in most countries. Now, for what it's worth, language-wise, something very interesting here. Very few people there speak English or even Spanish. They understood my Spanish better than my English, but it's purely Portuguese out there. Now, I ran into some friends who had been down there for about 3-4 months, and they learned some very basic Portuguese. But it was enough to get them into that dating market, and these are not the best-looking guys in the world, but oh boy, did I see some of the girls they were talking to and actually going out on dates with. And I'm like, this could be kind of an endgame thing for me. I don't know, but I'm glad it's there. Honestly, probably a bit too chaotic of a country for me, but I was just impressed with so many things. And again, I'm glad it exists. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad I can base out of a more central place like Paraguay and just have all of these great, unique places around me too. Places which you might find are better suited for you and your lifestyle. The only way to know is to get your ass up and go there. Again, your intel, even right now, is subpar at best and awful at worst. You just need to go. Even if you don't have a great time, the fact that you now know that that place is not for you was worth the time and the money spent. But I'm glad you spent time with me and listened to one idiot talk about their limited experience there, and hopefully found this to be a nice departure from the more heavier subjects we've been talking about lately. And just understand there are just wonderful up-and-coming places that can give you such a better lifestyle than the one you have right now. And at the end of the day, there's really nothing to be afraid of. Planting your flag anywhere in Latin America is a good idea. I cannot recommend it enough. There's nothing crazy about it. Giving yourself no options at all is absolutely crazy. But as we are in every other aspect of life, contrarians, we're just early.